Well, hello again.
Hey, we're live.
We are live.
You got me picking up pieces off the floor.
So Brad is in the workshop today, in the woodshop, obviously.
Where else would I be?
Getting stuff done.
Hopefully.
And, we do have 4 people watching, including myself. I've got it on the other
4
screen
people.
there. So when you come in, go ahead and sting that thumbs up, and we'll hang out for a while. Hey, JNDS, good to see you.
Thanks.
And, we're hanging out and decided, happy Valentine's Day. And
Happy Valentine's Day.
Is that a thing in Canada? Do you guys celebrate it?
We're Canadians. We're always looking for a reason to tell people we love them. Well, we're always looking for a reason to say I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, surprisingly enough, I've been told and I've seen where Valentine's Day was totally created just to sell more stuff. Like a retail
likely. I guess so.
I mean, you probably tell your wife you love her pretty often, right?
I tell her that every day.
But now you got to tell her you love her with chocolate.
Fortunately for me, she can't eat chocolate. So if there's chocolate in the house, it belongs to this guy.
Yeah, I gave Amy some chocolate the other day. It didn't make it the day. Didn't see 24 hours. It was gone. But
I asked my wife this morning, though. I said she's a real card person, so I have to, I try to really respect that and get a card for her, which doesn't always work out, but she's very understanding. But I asked her, I'm philosophical about things a lot of times, and I asked her, I said, where did the card giving thing come from in our history, right? Maybe there was something 100, 200 years ago that turned into giving cards at Christmas, Valentine's Day, birthdays, things like that. Because I don't think it was necessarily, Hallmark that invented the idea of giving a card. Maybe it was. So if anybody has the insight on that, I'd be curious as to where.
Probably because we were all too broke to buy anything, so we just had to scribble something on a card.
I can't get you nothing, so I just bought you that worth this.
Too broke, so here you get a piece of notebook paper.
And I was so broke that I actually made it myself. You see, the shop is a little bit empty. I moved a lot of stuff outside so I could move around in here.
Well, next week is your big conference, and there's people coming into the conference that gave you I have insight because we talk all the time, but I know that people watching don't. So Brad got a kind of a rush order for some woodenware.
Yeah, I did.
And they wanted... Well,
I got a good order, and then I got the phone call saying, "Can I have that by the end of the month?" It was like, maybe.
So, really putting in some work the last couple days. And in our chats, when Brad's been sitting there, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmitting it over on his workbench, and I'm just kind of rambling on and talking and chatting and just hanging out together. So
I'm about to make 6-frame covers. 6-frame migratory covers. So those are the plywood pieces for it.
So you're using high quality external grade plywood.
Absolutely. This stuff is what you use for sheathing buildings. It's got a waterproof glue, so it doesn't delaminate easily when it gets wet. And it's a reasonably decent plywood. This has got a little bit of a knot there. This one will be covered up. If I put this way, this one would be covered up by the top. Top shim.
And then in addition to that, it goes to a wax dipper and it all gets wax dipped. So
I'm mostly thinking about aesthetics, Some of this
should last quite a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. See if I can find a piece of this. There was a couple of years ago, and I've been using I've been using material I have on hand, fortunately, because then it hasn't cost me anything. Oh, I know it's here, but I can't.
Here's a question I know the answer
So there's
to.
a couple of years ago, I got some plywood and I ordered a lift of plywood from my hardware store, and I guess he had a hard time getting a hold of it, and so he ordered from the city. He ordered a lift that was actually upgraded, and so I've got a bunch of this stuff left over. This you'd build kitchen cabinets out of this. This is beautiful plywood. So a couple of years ago, Ian got a whole bunch of equipment made out of this. This year, the covers, some of the cover, a lot of the covers are being made out of this too. So they're going to be really nice finished product if I don't screw it up.
So Ivan Langham's asking, Brad, how do you heat? I know the answer. The geothermal.
Well, my shop specifically, my shop is not geothermal. I'll take you on a little tour. So this is a large double garage. It's 30 feet square, so it's 900 square feet. And the main heating system is this. This is a 10,000 watt boiler heater. There's a little pump here, a little accumulator, and then there's water lines that were put into the floor when the building was poured. When the floor was poured,
so it runs hot water through the floor.
Yeah. So that's the main heat in the building. After the fact, I found that when I would open the doors, open the big overhead doors, I put oversized doors in here too. It's a 10-foot ceiling. That door is 8 feet high and 10 feet wide, so that's a foot bigger than a normal door. And I noticed that when I open the doors in very cold weather, the air cools off in here pretty fast, but it's not a big deal because the all the stuff in here and the floor, it's all its thermal mass, so it recovers pretty fast. However, the thermostat right away says, "Oh my God, it's cold," and then that boiler goes crazy, and it would get the floor way hotter than it needs to be. So I put in a which way? This way?
Yep.
I put in a 240 volt space heater with a thermostat over on this side.
So basically, you use the floor as a giant radiator.
Yeah, and the space heater just recovers the air heat when you open the doors. Then that space heater comes on. You close the doors. It'll run for a few minutes, bring the air temperature up again, and then it basically it tells, by that nature, it tells the boiler to, okay, cool it, boiler. It's not really, zero in here anymore. It was just somebody opened the door. So,
well, we had a whopping 1 day of snow here, and everything I've got is electric, and we pretty much leave the lights off. My office generally has lights on, and the other office generally has some lights on. But other than that, mostly off everything. And I got my electric bill.
Oh, I know. You tell me about
$623.47 for 1 month.
That's awful.
For 1 month. So like 2 million Canadian.
It's that sounds like one of my months, in the winter, but it's minus 30 here. So somebody asked a question there. Can you put the questions up, or?
Yeah, that one right there. Hey, Brad, donate actual figures.
That's a really good question. It's really hard to know how to price things. It's really hard to know how to price things, and especially when migratory covers. If you look in the marketplace and try and see what the market for migratory covers is, nobody makes them. Like you can't buy them from the big bee supplies that I've seen. In particular, most people don't supply those, so it's hard to tell. If I was making a telescoping cover, that's easy. Everybody makes those. for inner covers, things like that. Even a bottom board. I want to buy a bottom board, piece of cake. But if I'm going to build a 2-way pallet or 3-way pallet or a 6-frame migratory cover, how do I price that? That's a really good question. I usually end up pricing my equipment too low, and particularly because of the time it takes to build them, because it's again difficult to know how many hours do I put into a migratory cover. It's really difficult to know. It's difficult to calculate. The really short answer to that is I feel that it should be around half. So your equipment, you can almost, I think, as a starting place, you could almost just take the cost of the material and then double that, and you should be pretty close to a sale price for that piece of equipment. Now,
Man,
some things are way easier, way less time consuming to assemble and build than other stuff. So then you kind of have to, modify your price from there. Those jigs that I built that you saw on the vlog last week, I grossly underpriced myself on those because it takes so long to sand and whatnot. But
well,
it is what it is.
Man Lake sells a untreated, I'm sure it's pine, migratory top cover, 10 frame, $24.95 US.
Yeah.
And a treated one is $26.95. It might be copper naphthenate or something on it, but it's not cheap, right?
And and again, I know a lot of people are not in my country, so you're not dealing with the same market, you're not dealing with the same value of the dollar and the purchasing power, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't just translate things from one country to another, even though the currency just has the same name. It doesn't mean anything. It's sort of different. However, any migratory cover I build is $20 currently. If it's a 10 frame, 6 frame, 5 frame, 4 frame, doesn't matter. It's $20 because the amount of material in it isn't the largest determining factor in why I want $20 for that. It takes me exactly the same amount of time to mill the material and assemble the pieces in a 4 frame as a 10 frame.
And so dipping is probably similar on the equipment as well.
Yeah. It takes hard, it takes more effort for the dipper to dip 4 frame covers because there are a lot more pieces to them.
David's saying half as pure net or half as gross.
I don't know what that means. What I mean is, if you take all of your inputs, if all of your inputs are $10, then selling your product for 20 is a reasonable place to start with your calculation.
So you are making lids today.
Well, I was kind of getting to where I was going to start making lids. I realized I was farther behind than I thought. I finished up my pallets. There's just a few of them here. There's 10 here. I've got 20 of them sitting outside just to make space in the shop for the day. It's a beautiful day. There's no chance of certainly no chance of rain. Made myself laugh. So then I realized, well, I haven't even I haven't ripped the plywood for my covers, and I haven't cross-cut it. I haven't drilled it, so I've been spending my day doing that. And of course, again, this is what I end up with, these things. So these are cut to length, and they have the hole drilled in the center in relation to this side. Well, how do I know it's this side? Because I have a little can of spray paint. I spray paint the edge on the rough side as I'm drilling the hole, so that keeps me in line. So then once I assemble this, you can see, I'll grab an end cleat and then you can kind of see what we're talking about for width. So, and this end cleat is even too long. So you can see how much longer that is in the end cleat. This cover is, I think this cover is 12 inches wide. So that's a full inch wider than it needs to be. if you've seen me build covers before, you'll know that when I'm all done, then I'll trim them so that all the pieces are all perfectly smooth,
lined up
lined up
perfectly too.
flush. Yeah, it just makes a really nice finished product. So that's what that's all about. Plus, I was cutting um, leftovers when I build pallets. I'll cut the pallets. I'll cut 4 pallets out of a sheet of plywood, and then the leftover at the end, I could cut another pallet, but I'm fussy about which way the grain runs. So what
Right.
I do is the leftover at the end, I can cut that up into pieces for covers. So in a 4 foot wide piece, I can get 4 covers. But instead of running that 4 foot wide piece through the saw 4 times, I'll run it through 3 times, save myself some work because I'm making 90 of them. And I just cut them 12 inches wide, and that just ends up perfect. And then I can build those and size them when I'm done.
Ivan asked, do you have bee equipment auctions in your area, or can't you sell secondhand?
We do have bee equipment auctions from time to time, and we are allowed to sell secondhand.
Well, one thing that kind of limits, I don't know if it's a limiting, well, it is somewhat of a limiting factor, is the fact that your season is so small. From the time you pull your bees out, it's go time. And you throw some feed on them for a week or two, and then it's start stacking honey supers on, right? And
my bees will come out of the building early April, and then they pretty much just need to be fed until early May. But once early May starts, it is full on until late October.
Well, the one thing is, and we talked about this the other day about it's kind of like when you order queens, you have to order queens so far in advance, not even knowing how many you're going to need.
No,
so it's kind of a rough guess.
Always a big problem is you don't really know, especially if you're wintering outdoors. A lot of the outdoor guys are trying to pick a warm day in February to go and pull the lid off and kind of make a count as to what they're going to get, because they need to order bees in February. They need to order queens in February, and packages. If they want to get packages, you have to order in February. So it's tough to know, especially, you see Ian's building, they're 5, were they 5 or 6 high, I think, in Ian's building.
I mean, I couldn't see the top boxes. I mean, I could see the top boxes, but I couldn't look into the top boxes when I was in there, right? So
well, even mine, they're 4 high, and the top box is this high. I need a little ladder to actually see in that.
Well, and the same thing, I mean, as far as ordering ahead of time, so let's look at it. Let's say you got 1,500 hives in a building like Ian does, right? And you don't know at that point what percentage are alive or what percentage are dead. So then you don't know. That goes into, well, how much extra equipment do I have for honey supers and stuff? So you don't know if you have to order your equipment ahead of time. Well, you would, but you don't know how much equipment you're really going to need until you pull them out either. So you have to do all that stuff way ahead of time. So it makes it a little bit challenging.
Yeah, it's dicey. You can get caught your pants down pretty easily in the spring. If you're trying to wait to find out. I see Alex on here. Alex is I know him. He's a beekeeper near here.
Hey, Alex.
And so he helped me out last summer with some bees. That was really
Doug
nice.
Said warm day in February. Forecast for Sunday is -39 without wind chill.
I know. I was thinking the same thing when I said that this year there's no warm days. There was one a couple of weeks ago. I think we had a pretty warm day. But boy, the forecast right now, it goes up about 1 degree every day for the next 2 weeks.
Well,
the Saturday, the 21st, 22nd.
But it's consistently cold as compared to where I'm at, where 2 weeks ago it was snowing.
Yeah.
Last week it was 80 degrees, and right now we're 51.
Yeah.
So it's just
all volatile like that.
All the time.
And the the most meaningful part of that, I think, Bob, is that temperature, between freezing and what would be, say, between 40 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Like that's the temperature that having the bees go back and forth through that temperature, I
They
think is
consume a
really,
lot more
really
resources.
hard on the bees because they get up to 60, 70 degrees and they start to fly, and then they go back down to 30 or 40 degrees, and they have to cluster, and they don't react to that very fast. I really don't think
Well,
they
nature
react to that
doesn't
very
either,
fast.
right? So it's 80 degrees, something might start to bloom, and then it goes back down to 50, and it's like, well, you know, luckily I was able to show where my bees were bringing in some pollen. So the cold weather, maybe that gives them some more resource to work with, and stuff like that. But it's
So it's funny. It's funny because we do think my first winter, the beekeeper, I wintered outdoors, and all winter. It was a pretty normal winter that year. However, it started late. It didn't start until middle of December. It didn't get really appreciably cold. But it was a pretty typical winter. It was pretty cold weather. Um, and I remember thinking, I had bugs in a box in the backyard that's minus 30. Like they're done, right?
and you're up
there's
there
no
thinking
there's no
this
way.
is this is pre-meeting me, right? So you're probably like,
Oh
man, I
yeah,
live
yeah.
down in the southern United States,
This
right?
is exactly what I was going to
You're
say.
wrong.
I'm thinking, man, those guys down, and I'm watching YouTube, and I'm looking at a lot of people. So you see people all over the world, and you see a lot of people down south, especially in the winter, because they're actually managing bees. And I'm thinking the whole winter, I'm thinking, gee, I wish I was down south. But then I keep thinking about, or I keep hearing people saying, well, my colony died. My colony died. Oh, I lost my colonies. My bees died. My bees. And I'm thinking, you guys are off your rocker. Like, how could you possibly be losing bees? It's not 30 below in your backyard right now.
Nothing's
But
blooming still yet.
but but I'm learning that it's the opposite. That here the temperature goes down and it's cold and it stays cold for 4 or 5 months, and then it comes up again, right? And it's far more predictable here. Our seasons are very clearly defined. We have super cold season, and then we have nice warm season.
Well, it's beekeeping is challenging across the board. For just the art of beekeeping, I think is challenging, right? There's so many different things to consider and to worry about. And then, so I don't think it matters necessarily where you're at. You're going to have a percent of losses, and we're trying to minimize that all the time. But it just depending where you're at, it makes a difference. I have very sandy soil here. I deal with hive beetles, wax moths, varroa. If there's a pest to the bees, we pretty much deal with it. Dragonflies, the whole 9 yards. And it makes it challenging where you go a little bit more up north and they still have varroa and wax moth, but then they're like, yeah, but we don't really deal with the hive beetles too much or something,
Yeah, and wax moth is only every fall they're done, right? I see Corey's on here. Corey, guess what? What do you think?
You got them all trimmed up yet?
No. Well, yeah, these I do. These I do. These are done. They're all trimmed nice and flush. So that's one of Corey's. So I just thought I'd show him since he's on the chat. I'll put it down.
Well, so obviously everybody in this chat watches is watching YouTube, and I am seeing so many YouTubers talk about their losses now, right before spring, how many hives they've lost and the big die off and everything. But we've been talking about that for a year, ever since your spring last year. We were talking about, or actually winter, the amount of losses. And I've been transparent, which I've lost 75% of mine. So it is a thing. But how much of that is us, and how much of that is, mismanagement of your colonies, and how much of it can you just, I think it's easy for me as a beekeeper to say, oh, you know what? It was just varroa mite and that killed them. I don't know.
Well, chances are it was.
Yeah, but
you
go out to a colony and it's just gone, right? It just absconds. Yeah. There's nothing in the box to even to do a mite wash on after they're dead, to do an autopsy to say, hey, yeah, this was mites, or this was beetles, or this was wax. It's really hard to quantify what actually causes it.
Well, I actually have. I've been in a lot of conversations, and a lot of times there are things that are out of your control, but it distresses me when I hear, sometimes I'll run into a person, and every issue they have, every difficulty they have is an outside force, right? And what distresses me about that is that if it's not, it's kind of harsh to say, but if it's not your fault, then you're powerless to change it, right? If I can look at something that failed and I can say, oopsie daisy, right? Like, I didn't do it right. I made a mistake, or I had the wrong method, or I could do better. That's great, because I could change that. Right. Maybe I don't want to change that, but that's me. Right. So, what Ivan was, do you do bee classes? Is that directed at me?
I'm sure
I don't. I kind of have. I've done. You can see at least you can see an OTS class I did on my channel. You can see a introduction to queen rearing class on my channel. I don't do classes for money. I don't sell classes. If I do any, it'll just be a free class, generally advertised among our local association. So that's kind of the answer.
You have a meeting that is for new beekeepers. That meets what, the first?
Yeah, we meet every month. Well, almost every month. 8 months of the year we meet. And so, yeah, that's an association of, and you could be any beekeeper. Ian is a member of that one. But there's people who don't even have bees yet are a member of that one. So it's just a hobbyist sideliner kind of a level association. It's a really good association. So I think it's really helpful. And if I have a workshop here, then I'll definitely advertise it among that association that I'm a part of, just to get some exposure and help people out. That's all. That's the only reason I do it, just because I'm passionate about something like queen rearing. So I'll just have a Saturday workshop, and I'll get 20 or 30 people show up, and we'll just talk about bees for the day.
So Phil at 33 Mile V says, Brad, since you build pallets, here's a question. Which are used more on your pallets, U clips or W clips, and why is it preferred?
U clips is what I use. I was looking at a W clip here a second ago, but now I'm not sure where I was seeing it. It was on. And
I apologize. My wife brought me a nice Southern Valentine's dinner.
This is what Phil means. This is a U clip. To give you a background so you can see it. There's a U clip, and if you think about a two-way pallet, for example, then one box will sit here, and then the other box will sit beside it, so that this clip sits in the center of the pallet, and it holds the boxes like this, so they don't slide off the pallet. So there's two of those. There's one front and one rear on the pallet. And what he means by W clip is, I actually have one here because I don't use them. I just have this as a sample. It's like this. So it's kind of like a W. And so that yields a space. you put one box here, one box here. There's a space in the middle. It looks like it might be
Half inch,
5/8
maybe.
of an inch, maybe 3/4. Yeah, something like that. And the issue with these, the one issue with these for my equipment is they're not made for my equipment because they're made for a 3/4 inch box side, right?
And all yours is
My
5/8.
my 7/8. So my boxes are 7/8, so they would not fit in this. This one's made for 7/8. It's a 2-inch overall, so it's got space enough for two 7/8 box sides. Now the downside with a U clip is the boxes are tight against one another, so they can harbor moisture there and cause rot, and they can also hide ants, things like that. So you can have problems with that. The moisture usually isn't a big problem if you're dipping your equipment. It avoids soaking up moisture pretty good. W clips are nice because you get that little space in there. Wind can blow through there, keep things dry. Don't give a nice close up space for the ants to get in there, any other bugs.
Ivan says, Brad, are you a self-taught woodworker? I think the GB means he's in Great Britain. I'm not for sure, but
yeah, I think it is. He's got the little flag there. Well, at least I can see the flag there.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Yeah, pretty much. I had an uncle who later in his life he made his living woodworking. He was a carpenter. He actually worked for my dad when I was young. Carpenter, building some buildings and stuff, and then he ended up owning a cabinet shop. He built some very nice cabinet products in his shop. I actually have a sander. It's not in my shop right now. That came out of his shop. So my interest in woodworking though came from when I was very young. I was probably 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe 10. We had a neighbor who was an old Swede. Oh, he was a lovely man. He was a big, tough Swede. 30 below in the winter. He never buttoned his shirt higher than this, right?
And the 70s.
He'd go. He'd say, "Ole, let's go up to the shop," and he'd put his little cap on, but he wouldn't button his shirt up, and it's 30 below, right? So anyway, he was my best friend growing up. To be honest, I'm getting all emotional thinking about him. So he was born in 1897. So how many people have you been best friends with who were born in the 1800s? So I used to go to Ole's shop. He had a wood shop. He used to do stuff. I've got a grandfather clock that he built, and I'd tinker away and accomplish nothing, but he'd be happy to have this little neighbor kid in his wood shop having a good time. So that was really, I think, the beginning of my interest in woodworking. I've taken little classes and things and whatnot. I've watched lots of YouTube like people do, and TV and online things, and I've got videos here, magazines and books. I'll just turn this around. I don't often look at them now, but because I've gone through them all. But there's magazines and videos and books and things here that I've
now
used.
We have the internet for those things.
Well, yeah, a lot of that kind of came sort of via the internet. And so there's a lot of education and knowledge to be gained from those things. So yeah, you could say self-taught, but from different places.
And you share your plans online on SketchUp.
I have put to date. I've put all my plans on the SketchUp warehouse. They call it. You can go to the SketchUp warehouse online and search for that B-Man, and you can see a lot of the products that I'm building here, covers and pallets and all kinds of stuff.
And in this chat, we haven't seen any nailing or gluing. That's kind of unusual for a beekeep.
No,
or the woodworking videos.
Because I was just getting set up here. I haven't set up my assembly line.
And Bill, I am eating because normally we do this live or a little bit earlier in the day. Today was just one of those days.
Yeah, I have to do it on an assembly day because otherwise I'm running the machines and the saws and whatnot. So it's just the way it is.
A little bit
You want me to
louder.
put one of these together?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna make you bigger.
Make me bigger. Don't make me bigger. Oh man, don't make me bigger.
The solo layout here.
Okay. I think I forgot to turn my air compressor on. I need to go do that. It might get noisy.
Uh-oh. So while he's going to do that, just want to say thank you everyone for coming in. Please smash that thumbs up for Brad's channel.
Nope, it's on. So we'll do
right, so
this.
Back on him. I'll put him back solo.
All right. I'll get you a little closer here so you can see the bench better. Okay. So when I build my covers, a lot of times when things are built, and this kind of goes back to what we're talking about. You know, where did I learn woodworking? Well, I learned a lot of what I do now from places that talk about building fine woodworking, you know, fine furniture and stuff. And so sometimes I can't help myself. So often what you see is you'll just see a piece of wood like that, just kind of put it on there and staple it on, right? That's called a butt joint. It's fine. Use a good glue. You'll be okay. I can't really bring myself to that. So I cut a rabbet in that end cleat. And I'll put it on there like that. So you can see there's a little more glue surface. And there's a mechanical kind of registration to get that to fit just perfectly. And boy, I nailed that. I nailed that rabbet perfectly. That fits just, I'm really impressed with that. So that kind of comes into play putting this thing on. I'll put a little bit of this Type Bond 3 waterproof glue. Put that right on in here. Grab my nailer. I think I've run about 1.5 inch nail there. The idea is to get it to go straight into that plywood. And it doesn't always. Sometimes it comes out the top. But if it comes out the top, see, that one did. Now that came out the top there. That's not the end of the world. I'll just kind of pound that flat. Because there's another piece that goes on here. Now, you see I was pounding on that. Well, I can do that now because I have a mechanical support for that piece all the way down there. I'm not hammering on a shear joint. I hope that's all kind of making sense. So I'll get another one. A bit of glue. I tend to put too much glue on a lot of these. I'm working with one side. I'm flushing this up with one side, always the same side. So, yeah, get better. It didn't come out of that side. All right. So, flip that over. And now some of my pieces aren't very nice. I'm kind of embarrassed by that. Flip that over. And then I can put some glue on that. I want to show you a rub joint. Have you ever heard about a rub joint, Bob?
I have not.
Now, a lot of the nails and staples and screws that I use really are there because for clamping, right? If I had enough clamps, I could just clamp all of this wood together as the glue set, and I wouldn't need any fasteners. But I don't have that many clamps, so I use screws and nails and things. But here's a clampless joint. See, I've got glue on both those. I'm going to take that. I'm going to rub it like this. And I can't move that anymore. It grabs right onto it. So you can't push it around. It's not sliding anymore. That's a rub joint. That's a sufficiently clamped joint. You could just let that sit. The glue would cure, and it's a good joint. Now, I haven't bothered to line that up, which I'll do now. And then I drive a nail down through that. Again, trying not to blow out either side, which happens way too often. Get rid of that one again. I kind of hurry when I'm making my parts, and I just make too many, and I cull them as I'm working. I just pick them up. If I don't like the look of it, I'll just set it aside. Okay. So we'll get this nicely lined up. And the key here is know how long your fastener is, and when you pull the trigger, never have your fingers closer to it than the length of the fastener. That's 1.5 inches, so I have to make sure my fingers are more than 1.5 inches away. Okay, so that's that.
Billy is asking, what size are your feeder holes?
2-inch.
Now, you have 2-inch plugs that go in. Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I will say that if you're going to do this, make sure you use a Forstner bit. And I don't know if you know what that is. I'll show you. This is 2 1/8, but this is a Forstner bit. Okay, they're sometimes called a sawtooth bit. When they get bigger, they make these sawtooth on the side. Smaller ones are smooth. But so that's a Forstner bit. That'll drill an accurately sized hole. A hole saw will not. If you use a hole
kind of
saw,
warble out the hole a little bit when you're using a hole saw.
It'll likely be bigger. And these have a very slight taper to them. So they rely on this kind of the top edge of that to keep them tight in there, right? So that's my tip on that. And they're going to ask where you get those. And I'm going to tell you I don't know, because I've looked at the manufacturer, the kind of the global supplier, and I don't really know how to buy them from there, because they don't really sell to the public. These plugs are, I had to go get my screws. These plugs are meant for temporary use when companies make pumps and hydraulics and whatnot. They're just the part that screws into an opening to keep the dirt out.
But sometimes they have them on pipes. They're usually smaller than that.
Pipes, yeah. There's thousands of different descriptions of them. So anyway,
so if I go into Lowe's and I see all the 2-inch pipe having the caps removed off of it, I know who did it.
You know, a beekeeper was there.
Beekeeper was there.
Yeah, I'll buy them in a box of 1,000 sometimes. So okay, so here we go. We're talking about clamps. Now, I don't know if you can kind of see that. There's a little bit of space. This part, it's nailed to the end cleat, but it's not really attached to the plywood. I could clamp that down, but again, I don't have enough clamps if I'm building 100 covers. So I'll put some screws in here.
Just to
I'll
draw
run
it
an
tight.
inch and a, what's that? Yeah.
Just to draw it tight.
Pull that top cleat right down. And of course, I've got 3/4 plywood and a 3/4 inch top cleat. So that's 1.5 inches. I'm running an 1.25 inch screw. So I just put a few in there. Put 3 in a 6 frame, 4 in a 10 frame. And when I'm done, you'll never see these screws again. Like my pallets, there's a lot of screws in the pallets that you never see. All right, so there's that. Now the next part, I don't know if I've got cut properly. I had to cut them to length, but we'll see.
So with that one right now, essentially, oh, you building a feeder shim.
Yeah, you could use this cover exactly the way it is. Once I trim it, then that's fine. A lot of people use their covers exactly like this. Okay. I put a little 1/2 inch shim in there. It does need to be trimmed a little bit. Let me do that.
So he puts the 1/2 inch shim on there so he has room for some pollen or something like that.
Patties or something.
Sure. He says you can get those plugs at McMaster Car, whatever size you need and any amount. Travis Tyler did.
Good. Hey, Travis. McMaster Car. So that's probably a U.S. distributor. So that, boy, I nailed that length. Ooh. Okay, so as usual, glue. I love my glue. A little bit on the end, a little bit along the side. Get that piece right on there. Nice and flush. Now I'm going to use a staple for this.
A what?
I'm going to use a narrow crown staple. It's 1.25 inches.
Yep.
Because now I don't have a 3/4 and a 3/4. I have a 1/2 and a 3/4. This shim is a 1/2 inch thick. Glue running everywhere, of course, as usual. And then I just tack that on at the end. Okay. And again, that's a clamp, right? So as long as it's holding that down nice and tight, that's all I need out of those. Now, before I put the other one on, I'm going to put my, I call it the short shim. And these shims, one of the nice things about making these shims is that the width of these shims is immaterial. You see that this short shim is wider. I think it's 7/8 or something. This is just made out of a 3/4 board. And so, but these shims need to be cut to length nicely. They need to be exactly the length of the box, and these need to be the right length to give the width of the cover. So I'll just put a little more glue on here. On here.
Is the short shim necessary?
That's a good question.
Would it not sit on the sides and the?
Yeah, I think it would. I often wonder. I think it does. You know, if you're stacking things on that, like if you're transporting and whatnot, then that just, your other pallet will be sitting here, right? Putting pressure here. It's yeah, you're right. I often think about that. Is it necessary? I don't think it is.
I mean, it's definitely better constructed with the other shim in there, but
Honestly, it uses no material because all of the scraps that you can't make anything else out of, you
right.
make a short shim. I've got more short shims in the parts bin than anything, because anything that can't be made anything out of gets made into a short shim. I just have to kind of guess where this one's going to land, but all right, get that in there. And that cover is assembled.
now it's just a matter of trimming that last piece of wood off and it's finished.
Yeah. I want to make sure I don't have squeeze out here, because when I trim it, that side is going to run against the fence on the table saw. So when I'm done, I'll set my table saw to exactly 11 inches. And you can see that even my top and end cleats are 11 and an 1/8. So I always cut them oversized.
So then it's exactly correct.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So that's just the extra that I didn't cut off when I cut the sheets in for. So there we go. And then I take my little router bit, and I'll round over every surface. The only thing I won't round over, I'll even round over in here, but I won't round over this because you need to leave that square for the plug to grab hold of. But I'll round over here. It's important to round over this one and this one, because my covers are made with kind of zero tolerance. They're made exactly the width or length of my boxes. So the little round over helps it to kind of slide in there if it's too tight. This one will help the pallet when you're stacking. It'll help the next pallet to not catch on the edge. It's surprising how often that happens, and slide in there when you're stacking with the forklift.
And that's a unique
and the
design
rest
that you came up with for the pallet interlock with the lids.
Yeah, let me show that off. I'm pretty proud of that. I did kind of invent that. I was talking to a young fella at Ian's one time, and he was showing pictures about he built himself a homemade easy loader, and so he's showing that off, and I was looking at the pallets he was lifting, and I was looking really close at them, and I saw that he had interlocking pallets and covers, and I said, "Wow, that interlocking pallet and cover ID, that's genius," I said. And he said, "Yeah, I found that on the internet somewhere." I'm thinking, I know exactly where I found that on the internet.
Found that on SketchUp. That's where he found that.
I know exactly who came up with that. But I didn't say anything. It's really funny. So here's my pallet. And when I load bees, you can see how my pallet runner is a little bit of slop. You don't want it too tight because it's too difficult to do.
To load in and out.
You see how the pallet runner and the cleat interlock. So if you're carrying 2 or 3 hives stacked, they won't fall off of there very easily. And you see how the pallet is actually exactly the same length front to back as the cover. So where that comes into play is when you have a pile of, you load these on a truck, you have your box in between. When you strap your load, the pallets come together exactly the same as the covers. So you don't get any covers doing this, and you don't get any pallets with gaps and sliding around and whatnot. So
And then your
it just
pallets
makes,
being interlocked, it just all locks in nicely like a Lego
yeah,
set.
it ends up just being one thing on your truck. So it does actually work out really well.
All right. I'll move
So there you
Brad
go.
back from the solo layout there, because I know people are hearing me speak and they're like, "Who's that guy?"
So
In the
89 more of those done, and I'll be good.
How many more?
89 more.
89 more to go.
Yeah, I got to do 90 of those. So,
well, you've gotten your pallets done except for some trim up, right? And then
5 p.m.
The pallets are done. The pallets are 100%. The only thing I can do to the pallets, show you, that I might, depends on how tight timing is my little brand.
The branding on it.
I brand my pallets and my lids sometimes when I have time. I have 4 days to do these lids. So
you gotta do 15 a day.
No, I don't. I have to do 30 a day for 3 days because the last day is trimming and routing and stuff. So I need to do 30 tomorrow and Sunday and Monday.
Well, you definitely have your work cut out for you. I
should be able to do that fairly easily. But
Corey, so this means you're not getting your stuff on time. I'm just telling you now.
Yeah.
That's why we did the whole video, was just so you would know you're not getting it on time. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, 60 of those 90 are for Corey. So I hope he likes them. I've lined up the dipper already. Told him when I want to come out. He said, "Yep." He said, "Come on out. Not a problem."
Phil said, "So you should be building and not on here."
I probably should be.
Well, that's because we have no life. We are no life beekeepers.
I've already put in a pretty good day. I got out here a good hour, and I've got a lot done. I had to cut up all this plywood. I cut up. I finished my pallets, then I cut up all this plywood,
and now it's assembly.
It's not like I've done nothing.
Oh yeah, I definitely know you've been working. So I'm going to propose something to you. I'm not proposing to you per se, but
proposing. It is that Valentine's
you're already
Day.
married. But what I will say is several times when we haven't been live, we've taken really interesting, like Randy Oliver videos about a specific topic, whether it's queen rearing or making a starter finisher or whatever the case is. So since we have 43 people in the chat, I was wondering how many of those people may be interested if we did that, but we live streamed while we did that dissection. How many of those people would be interested in seeing something like that? I think
how it usually goes is we'll play a YouTube video on a certain topic, and so what happens is we go off to the side on little screens, and then the big screen. You've seen some of us share things before, and then so we'll play the video, and then we stop it at certain points and we have a short discussion about it. So,
right, and
it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun,
especially when you're bee nerds like we are, and then then you sit there and you can ask that question, right? You can say, well, why? He did something, but he didn't quite explain, or he over explained it and kind of complicated it, which Randy, we love you.
Randy never does that.
But you're like me in that aspect. You just kind of keep going and going like the Energizer Bunny on some topics. So we've been doing that, and Charlie was in on the last 2 nights.
One last night, and Charlie was actually the last 2 we did. Charlie was there. And he was asking questions. Like it kind of, that one kind of started with just a casual chat, and Charlie was asking some questions about building a self starter, et cetera, et cetera. So we started talking about different things, and And I said, well, you know that Richard Knoll video where he puts together that cell starter? And Charlie says something like, yeah, I've seen it. I didn't really follow it, or I had questions or something. And so we just said, well, let's watch it and we'll talk about it.
Right.
And it was really helpful for everybody.
Yeah, and we've done it on other instances, right? I don't even remember what it was, that long rabbit hole we went down. Oh, I do know exactly what
The
it
queens
was.
and the drones.
The queens and the drones, and the
Yeah.
grandpa drones, and you can really watching.
We were so far down that rabbit hole, I didn't know if I'd ever get out.
Oh, you can learn so much, but you can get so confused on stuff.
Yeah.
I know most people don't think, but I'm actually kind of an optimist on a lot of things. And I know you would never believe that listening to me, right? I'm not saying all things I'm an optimist on, but, like bee loss. I lost whatever I lost. I can only do with what I've got. So there's no need to cry about what was dead out there, right? Only what I can do to rebuild and get things back going. So and I was I found a happy accident. I found an extra live colony in my apiary today, so that was a good thing, right? So that's one extra. So if I can just split them all once, I've doubled my size of my apiary and rebounded nicely, because that's where I wanted to be at anyway. So maximizing royal jelly production. Yeah, we talked about all of that, all the crazy stuff, and really went down.
Yeah, I want to touch on that, and I don't know your exact quandary, what you need to know, but about starter finishers, there's really only one thing that you need to know, in my opinion, is it just needs to be really strong, lots of bees, lots of resources. This is what.
If you think you got enough bees, shake 3 more frames.
Yeah, you need more bees, right? See, I get real excited about this topic, and I did a queen rearing workshop at my place a couple of years ago, and you can see that on my channel if you'd search for it. And I remember there was a young man, like a very young man, in the audience, and I would ask questions, and he would pipe up, and boy, he was sharp. He knew the answers, and I remember saying, one point I said, well, when do the bees want to make queens? Well, swarm season, right? That's when they're wanting to make queens. So the question was, well, why? What's so special about that time of year? And he puts his hand up and he says, because there's flowers. I said, exactly right.
Nectar
The weather is warm. There's lots of flowers. There's lots of nectar. There's lots of pollen. There's lots of bees. There's lots of resources. Everybody's feeling good. It's ready to go, right? So they start making queens. So really, you need to emulate that. You just need to make that happen. Lots and lots of bees. If you're trying to do that outside of a main flow, outside of a swarm season, then you need to emulate that with feeding, extra nurse bees, extra brood, queenlessness, right? All of those things that just make the bees want to make queens. So that's what you're trying to do.
To me, the most important thing about queen rearing, and this is kind of something I've learned from you, is what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Are you trying to raise 1,000 queens, or are you trying to split 12 hives and make 24 hives? How many queens do you need? How long is it going to be? Are you going to be grafting for? That's going to change a lot of things. How you set up your starter finisher. If you have to recharge it with bees. If you can do like Randy did in the video and take a double deep and make it into 3, basically a single deep and 2 5/5 in deep boxes, or just how you're going to plan. So really, if you're like me, hard charging, and you're like, I'm going to graft queens, and then you just go start making queens, and you really haven't prepared for those queens. Like Randy said in the video, he's out there literally grafting with snow on top of his hives. He's like, I'm not grafting
preparation. If you decide one day, I'm going to go graft a bunch of queens and go do that today, well, you're not probably going to be successful because you should plan ahead. Sometimes you don't even need to plan ahead farther than a day or two, but sometimes you need to plan ahead a week or more, depending on what method. So there's two different things, and I'm not a big fan of paint by numbers, right?
Right.
I'm more a fan of understand what you need to accomplish, and then you will know how to do that. You'll figure out, because my apiary, I can show you how I do it. It's not going to be your apiary. You're going to have different things. You maybe have a different climate. So you just need to know what you need in that box, and you need to go and make that happen. DC had a good question. You know, is it better peak nectar and pollen flow, or is it better swarm season? Because the two aren't always the same. And I'm going to say both.
Yes and no.
Peak swarm season is probably a really good time, but you need to then emulate a pollen and nectar flow. You need to put fresh pollen in that colony, and or if nothing else, put patties in there. You need to provide them with syrup. You need to emulate having a nectar pollen flow.
Right, because there will be no forager bees in there.
Yeah.
At least not at first, depending how long you run it. Mm-hmm. Because when you make that split, they're all going to fly back to their mother hive, and all you're going to have is brood and nurse bees.
So there's very different ways, and you're right, Bob. Ask yourself a question, because if you're going to raise 5 queens, that's a great, there's great methods to do that.
I challenge everybody to at least try to graft 5 queens.
Absolutely. Do a bar, right? Do 1 bar or 5 or 10, whatever. Like just to do it. Don't do it for any big fancy plan. Just do it. But if you want to raise, you watch Richard Knoll, he raises hundreds of queens a year. He's doing exactly the same thing. He's just doing a little different way because he needs to maximize, the impact on that. So and that was the kind of the gist of my queen rearing video. It wasn't a step-by-step, this is exactly what you do from front to back. It was, here's the understanding of what you need to accomplish in this process. Because what I wanted to really instill upon people, for some reason, somebody told a lot of these people that they can't raise queens because they only have a couple of hives. Well, you know what? If you have 1 colony, and if you've ever seen that colony swarm, that's proof that you have what you need to make queens.
Right.
right? Because if they want to swarm, I'll guarantee you they've made 1 or more queens. So that's a fallacy. If you have 1 colony and you want to make 1 or 2 queens to, replace or to, bolster your fault tolerance in there, absolutely you can do that. It's not an issue. You want to raise 100 queens, you're going to need some resources.
And then,
you're probably not going to do that with 1 colony.
Well, right? I mean, I've also seen several videos where people will make their nukes off to the side and have their queens, right? They have some resource hives off to the side, and if they go queenless in one of their production hives, they'll take the whole nuke and drop it right in with bees and everything. So it's, when you start planning for grafting, there's a lot of things. Well, what are you going to do with the queens, right? So when you get done, you got to have either the resources to put the queens in, the nuke's already split and ready to go, hopelessly queenless, ready for a virgin or something like that.
Some mating nukes or something. Let me show you something I have here. These are really cute. I really like these. Now I'm going to start sneezing, coughing. I blew the dust everywhere.
A little bit of dust.
I was standing dust.
It reminded me of the Munsters when Grandpa would pull out the book and blow it off.
So I actually showed this. It was a year, 2 years ago. James got a hold of me and said, I'm trying to figure out what to use for mating nukes. And I said, well, I don't know what you should use, but I've seen a system that actually seems really cool to me, and I've built these for this guy who, brought these to my attention. This is a medium depth. Okay,
Pretty fuck
this
done.
little box, this little box is exactly dimensionally 1/4 of a 10 frame box. Okay, I'll show you what the box is, but also has 5 frames in it, and these frames, I've trimmed these frames. Most end bars are 1 3/8 wide. I've trimmed these to 1 1/4. So that allows me to get 5 frames in here with some nice management space in there. They're not super tight. An 1 1/4 is fine for brood. In nature, most brood frames are 1 1/4 spacing. So that's a nice little box. I made that. I got some nice rabbited frame rest, just like a big boy's box.
And you can put 4 of them right on top of a deep.
And yeah, so this is where that comes in. Once you build this, or once you have this, well, you got foundation. That's not going to do you any good. So you take this thing, you put 4 of these on top of your colony in your honey flow, and they draw it out, right? And then you have to extract those. I can extract those in my old 33 radio. So that's a really neat little mating nuke. They're not especially cheap. You have to build all the frames, and that foundation is. This is you get 2 of these out of a sheet of foundation. It's just a medium sheet, and if you cut them this wide, you get 2. When I make them in general, I'll cut my foundation in 3. That'll just leave a bit of a space, a bit of a gap on the sides here. But I didn't find that to be a problem. They just keep building right out to the end anyway. So it
But once you
economizes
had
there.
once they had drawn that out, essentially you could put a queen excluder down. The bees would come up into the 4. You could then take the 4 off and put a double screen board, and then add 4 queens.
So you want the queen to come up in there and lay it with brood.
Well,
that's exactly what you want to do.
But would she come to all 4 boxes, or would you find yourself having to checkerboard them?
Well, I don't know. She might not. But if she doesn't, if she lays 4 of these minis with brood,
yeah, you can just
then
put
you
one
just
in
sort
each
them
box.
around, make sure there's 1 frame in each box. And that's a great deal because that'll anchor the bees into the mini mating nuke. And that's one of the challenges, is anchoring bees into a mini. So I've actually wintered these. I've put these in my building as a quad, put a bee cozy around them, and wintered these. And I only did it once, and I only did it with 4 of them, and 3 of them survived. So I had 3 fresh queens in the spring. I think that's a great deal for wintering bees. It's a nice little box too. I really
Well,
like
you
those.
do fantastic woodwork. I swear, if I lived,
Well, thanks,
just
buddy.
to give you an idea, I'm going to get up for just half a second here, and that what you built compared to what I got from Daydant last year. It's 100% plywood. I mean, this has never been on a hive. It's just been painted, but it's just not very nice, to be honest with you. It's just not a very nice lid. And what you built, I mean, this is what, probably 1/2 inch or 5/8 right here. It's
and with
not
no shim, that's gonna work pretty easily.
Yeah, it's just not a very good one. Will it work? Yeah, I'm sure it'll work. The bees don't care. They'll live in a water meter box. They don't care. But if I were near you, you would be my go-to wood source for sure.
No, is it Dewey? Are you familiar with M3 Hoffman frames? Aren't these kind of called Hoffman self spacing frames. Isn't that what that's called?
M3.
You can't really tell because I've trimmed these. They look kind of straight, but there is a little bit of a narrowing there.
Well,
but those little, I make the little top bars. They're really easy to make. These I kind of got carried away making these a little bit special, but works.
yeah, it's for narrow spacing, but it doesn't really
Hoffman
say.
frames.
Yeah, it says Hoffman spacing varies. Dadant frames are 38 millimeters wide. British Standard and Langstroth are 35 millimeters wide. It says these terms are what are termed narrow spacing, which are for formal spacing of brood frames or in super frames for drawing out foundation and producing cut comb. But it doesn't really give me what the spacing is for Hoffman because it just says it varies.
I must admit, when I started beekeeping, I was brand new. I had no idea what I was doing, and I like most of us, I read almost everything I could find. I watched all the videos I could find. I read a lot of Michael Bush's stuff, and his approach to beekeeping is very different than what mine is today. However, I did read about how he had trimmed all of his frames to 1.25 inches to tighten up the spacing in them. And I almost did that when I started. I thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And my wife talked me out of it. But I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Because for one, at 1.25 inches, you get an 11th frame in your brood chamber, right? Who wouldn't want an extra frame of feed during the winter? I'd like 10% more feed.
In that situation, could you put 10 in a frame feeder? Would it fit or would it not?
Probably. I don't know. Probably. But I'd love to have 10% more feed in my brood chamber for the winter. I'd love to have one more frame for feed and bees in the summer. And if your frames are 1.25 inches, I can still space those out to 9 frames for a honey flow. That's easy enough. So
let me see. Just trying to scroll through the comments there. Mark Miller says he's planning now.
Should be.
To get ready.
I plan all winter, and then spring comes and everything goes to crap. So
yeah, that's me too. I got so much I want to do, and most of it doesn't happen. But so, how long do you want to? We've been going 1 hour and 18 minutes, which is
wow, time flies.
Quite a bit shorter than normal. But I know you got a bunch of work to do.
Well, I don't know. I might be closing down. It's almost 5:30 here. I'm getting pretty tired. I'd like to go in and spend time with my wife. And
on Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day.
Well, I'm glad you.
I'm gonna get another drink. I'm here. I can hear you.
I'm glad you put that lid together because it gave me time to finish my Valentine's dinner. My wife prepared for me. So we, Charlie. I think Charlie told me he's making the trip down to Bill's today. So maybe his live stream will be them together tonight. So he's something to check out.
How far away is that?
I think for him it's only 3.5 hours. I halfway contemplated going, and then it was 5.5 hours for me to go. So it was like,
Do I ever sell my bee boxes as flat packs? Do you mean these little guys, Ivan? Do you mean these? I could flat pack these easy, and they're easy to put together because they're just a rabbit joint. Just line that up nice, put some glue, and staple or nail it or screw it or whatever.
Yeah, you don't typically make your own big bee boxes.
I don't. That's the only box I build. I don't build anything else. I buy all my boxes.
Pallets, lids.
I build pallets and lids and a bunch of other stuff too, like bee escapes and just about everything. I build almost everything but boxes.
And
I don't build
I
these
know
boxes.
you've told me the reason why you don't make the boxes, but refresh my memory.
Well, I hate building boxes, first of all. And they don't save me any money because if I'm going to build a box, I need to have it dipped. So I need to go pick up the box pieces, bring them home, build them, take them back to dip. It's 2 hours away, the dipper.
Right.
Now, people
And
say,
your
well,
dipper is also the box builder. So you
and he's
can
a
just
box builder.
go there and have them
So
already.
I've got lots to do. So I give up box building. I don't build boxes. It's not worth it. I make zero money building boxes. Even if I cut all my own lumber and my own joints and stuff, not worth it.
Well, you got to
And
calculate
and
your
I
time in there as
and
well.
I'm not going to downplay anybody who wants to have fun building boxes. If you're a hobbyist or you're whatever, you got 10 boxes and you want to build your boxes, that's awesome. I fully endorse that, absolutely. But you ask me why I don't do it, because I spend my time building pallets and covers and things that maybe I'm going to use or I can sell. Uh, so I don't build. I buy
Well,
my frame parts and I
and
buy
a
my
lot of that has to do with scaling too, right? If you've got 5 hives and you need 3 supers apiece, well, now you got
yeah.
to make 15. Well, where if you got 200, well, now you're making 600 boxes.
Oh yeah.
So it's time becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
I've done it. I have done it. I have built lots of my boxes the first year or two. And I just learned that I absolutely have complete disdain for building boxes. I totally hate building boxes. I find it so weird how much I hate building boxes. But I'm trying to keep my language clean even right here because I really, really hate building boxes.
Well, I mean, if you've got to drive 2 hours to drop the box off to get it wax dipped and then
Yeah,
2 hours back, you might as well
yeah,
just go there for the same 2 hours, buy the boxes already wax dipped, and then just drive home.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? So I'm going to be taking uh, 30 pallets and 90 covers over there, in a week and a half, say, to get dipped, right?
Right,
Well, I'm there, put some boxes in the truck, right?
right.
If I need any, right? Or if I've got customers, they want to buy them, then I'll get them at that time. Yeah, they make a nice product too, and they're good people. They're really good people. I really enjoy working, dealing with them. They're just really, really nice people.
And see, I'm that way too. If I like somebody, even if their product is a little more expensive, I'll buy it from them just because I'm trying to support them. Right? It's for me, money is not the end all be all to everything. It
Yeah,
really isn't.
I,
I mean,
you
yeah,
know,
we've got to manage it and all that stuff, but
we do, and we're all under the gun these days. Everybody's hurting, but you're right. I think big picture. I think if you live your whole life with the almighty dollar being your guide, I think you're going to miss out
yeah,
on things like those relationships, right?
right.
So I can go and have those relationships.
But if you, I mean, just in your situation, even from last year, the relationships you built through whether it was YouTube or local beekeeping or being a part of your beekeeping community, when you needed a hand up, they all came together and said, "Here you go. We're going to help get you back on your feet." And
Did they ever?
it's a beautiful thing.
Did
Where
they
if
ever?
you're only searching for the cheapest thing, it kind of locks you into a few dealers or a few people that probably won't won't do you like that all the time, help you out. So trade-off.
Yeah.
But
No, you're absolutely right. And I remember last year when I brought my 3 colonies of bees out. I remember that
You just
video. And
put that in
and
perspective. I've got 4 times more colonies now than you did coming out of the barn.
I know, I know. But I remember specifically saying on my video, don't start sending me things. But people can't help themselves, right?
It's
What
but
can I say?
it's a good quality, right? I I, I
It is.
I'm like you. If you give from the heart, you get back more than what you ever
Yeah,
give.
yeah,
So
yeah. I totally believe that. This is actually, I just see this. Oh, just about knocked it over. I see this hat hanging on my. Oh my God, that's dusty too. With this hat I got from my box builder. This is a place
Lewis
where
and
I get
Sons.
my boxes and frames, and they do my dipping as well. Nice people, very nice people.
Not only that, but a lot of beekeepers I notice are also self-employed, right? Like Tom and Melissa, they do, I think, a landscaping business. You got
Yeah.
Tom Bacon he builds boxes and stuff, right? He's a wood crafter. Travis is a metal
Tom
fabricator.
Tom will grow the trees from a seed, watch them mature,
They
cut
cut
them
them down.
down, sawmill them, season them, plane them. Like
Oh,
that guy does everything.
Charlie's got a sawmill. Bill has a bee store. I've got a bee small bee supplies online, so it's
I think beekeepers are
entrepreneurial.
resourceful. Beekeepers, I think, are resourceful, and I think there's a certain, and not to play it up too much, but there is a certain fearlessness to be a beekeeper because there's so much out of your control. It's just you're always grasping at things, and things are just out of reach for you.
Right.
You're just thinking, well, maybe next year.
Well, you know why that is? Because when we make $50, we go put $75 on our credit card to buy 5 more lids and 3 more
I
feeders.
sold $100 worth of honey, and it only cost me $400 to do it.
Yeah. sold $100 worth of honey, but I got $400 in labels coming in for swarm lure bottles or something.
Yeah,
It's
I
always
know.
crazy.
I just start to just make a little headway, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, there's another $500 for labels for my jars, or there's another $1,000 for jars, or
Yeah.
there's another $5,000 worth of
Always.
sugar or something.
Yeah, and then you think, oh, I made the most honey I ever made this year. Oh crap, I gotta buy bottles to put all that in now, right? And it's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
always something.
Yeah. 12,000 pounds of honey and $40,000 worth of jars to put in.
Imagine, I can't imagine if I made 12,000 pounds of honey, if I only sold 1 pound jars, plastic, the squeeze bottle I got with the lid would cost me at least $5,000-6,000, probably more than that with shipping and everything, right? $6,000-7,000 in just plastic 1 pound bottles.
Yeah.
And guess what? You don't get that money till after you've sold the honey, and you can't sell the honey till you put it in the jar. So
that's right.
And
There's a big
then you
delay
have a
there.
die off over the winter, and you're like, oh crap, am I going to have any honey this winter coming up? This spring coming up.
There's still jars over here that I'm selling from my 2023 crop.
I'll tell you what,
kind of nice.
When I was at Randy's place, Randy McCaffrey Dirt Roosters down in Mississippi, and I went
19 Link, beautiful days, but it's been cold.
Went into their honey house, and they had pallets and pallets of jars in there. I was like, he's like, yeah, my dad got a little heavy-handed on the jar order. Right?
Got a deal of
trailer.
I know. I used to buy by the skid. There's like, I don't know, the big jars were about 70 boxes in a skid. The small ones were 90 boxes or something like that. And I just go and get a skid of them. I haven't done that in a while because I just got tired of trying to store them,
Right.
I didn't store them that long. I'd only store them about 3 months or so. because I'd go through 5 or 6 skids of jars in a year. But still, I'd always have to be storing jars, and they're empty jars. You got to store them nicely. You have to keep them
Something
clean.
else they do in Canada, at least Mike does, that they don't do in the United States, is you have an account at the store. Like so you can go in and say, I need this, 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 and this. Now you will eventually have to pay the piper, but you have an account, right?
You don't pay your account, then you don't have an account no more.
You don't have an account anymore. But
Yeah.
here it's like COD, cash on delivery. When you show up, you pay, you take your stuff, and have a good day.
Yeah.
They
treat me really well.
Well, Mike's good people too. I mean,
terms with my box builder guy, I have terms. Dancing Bee, I have terms. Bee Supply, I have terms. It's really nice because I can go and get a $500 jar order from Dancing Bee or Bee Made, and come home, pack the honey. My packer, I have terms, so I'll take a load of honey to pack, and he'll bill me $300, and I have 30 days to try to sell some of that honey before I have to start paying those bills. It really, really helps.
Link really says helps. It's -8 in Newfoundland.
-8. That's nice. That's nice. It'll go up here, but boy, it's going to go up slow for the next week or so.
Yeah, I'm at 48 F right now. I think is what it says, 48. Let me do the quick transition from F to C. We are 9C right now. A little bit warmer than your bee building.
Yeah, it's only about 15 in here. That's about 60, I think.
And let me see. Sunday it's supposed to get to 70, then back in the 50s for the next week and a half or so.
So DC put an interesting comment. Start a bring your own honey jar thing. Yeah, I kind of want to do that, but that's a lot more complicated than a person might think.
You always have to have warmed honey, right?
We always got to have warm honey. And if you're going to have a warm honey tank, you need a place to put the warm honey tank. I'm not going to put a warm honey tank in my woodshop.
Right.
You saw the dust that I blew off of that, right?
Yep.
Right. Can't put that in here. And honestly, there's not a lot of heated building storage, on my farm for the winter. So I just don't have the facility for that right now. I would love to do that. I'd love to have a tank of honey that was warm enough to pour for customers to show up with their container. I was thinking to have a honey day in the fall when I'm extracting, but then I'm busy extracting. But I don't know if we could manage that. My wife and I perhaps set up an extracting day special or harvest day special kind of thing. Show up, get a flat rate per pound in whatever container you bring, or you can buy my container, that sort of thing. I think that would go over well. Liquid honey only, that sort of thing.
Ivan says, don't you get club members to pull together and get the jar price down?
Well, I buy a skid of jars. Boy, Mike does really good on the price, so I can't complain at all.
Well,
that is what I do, right? It's just that I use all the jars.
And you have your meetings.
I'll go over there and buy $2,500 worth of jars in a shot, right? So I get good prices.
And not to degrade anything you've got going on, don't take this the wrong way, but you're one of the smaller producers in your area, so they're buying probably more jars than you.
A lot of producers who are larger than me don't sell in the jar.
They just bulk sell it, wholesale it to the
There's
co-op.
A couple. There's 2 other guys I know who would probably sell more honey than I sell. who use jars that are the same or similar to what I use.
Well,
I'm probably in the top 6 uh, larger consumers of jars like that. I may be overestimating; it might not be even 10, but
well, where I'm located here, I can say pretty confidently. Now, I don't know every beekeeper right around me, but I do know that I've had other beekeepers calling me for several months asking, do I have honey? I am the biggest producer in my local area. So when someone thinks, hey, let's get some local honey, and they hit the old Googler, I'm the first one that shows up, and I
yeah,
don't run out of honey for
that's
them.
what you want. That's what you want.
So
Yeah, I get a lot out of Google too when somebody looks for honey in my area. I
well,
come up on the hits.
I have to thank Charlie because Charlie turned me on to Gamber Container, and um, I'm still using the same case of lids that I originally bought that had 1,700 lids in it, and that one lid fits all my jars except for my pint glass jar. But my squeeze bottles, it fits 1 pound, it fits 3 pound, it'll fit 2 pound. They're all the same size, and they're reasonable. So like with the 1 pound plastic, I believe it's 350 in a case, and I believe with the lid we figured it out one day, it was like 47 or 57 cents a piece. I do sell online. I've got my own website. Brad's got a website. Now I think he doesn't ship outside of Manitoba.
I don't. Mine's not an e-commerce site. It's just information. So I just thought my shop is a mess here. I've got empty boxes that need to be taken out. It's so cold that I don't take stuff out. It's like, oh, put it in the corner here until it warms up. Since we're talking about this stuff,
And I like your jars.
It's all here. So mine are very simple. It's just a cylinder jar, and these are not labeled yet. But so that's one of my creamed jars. That's just a little more than a pound, 500 grams. Don't ask me what I pay for the jars because I don't remember.
How much do you sell that jar for?
$10. This is a 24 crop. If you remember my channel last year, I had a yard where I had a bit of a bear problem, and then I put up a fence. Well, that's this honey from last year. So that's a liquid jar, large. That's a 1 kg, 2.2 pounds, and I'll sell that direct for 15. So just very simple jars.
Well, but you've got a very attractive label, and it looks. I mean, it's very nice.
Thanks, buddy.
Alex, I do sell my honeys online on my website. You can order them there. Like I do flavored creamed honey. Now my creamed honey doesn't get as white as yours does.
Yeah, this is a very light amber honey. So that's that 2 pound jar, creamed and labeled. So
very nice presentation.
That's ready for the store.
Well, one thing I found with jars in particular, when I started, I was getting jars from everywhere, right? I was getting jars from Amazon. I was getting mason jars, and as far as branding, now everybody's different, right? I sell mine pretty much in my front yard or on my website, so it's not a big deal. Where you sell yours in a store, and you need to have a supplier that can supply you the same thing, and you don't have to go searching for it every time you go to buy it, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
And that happened with my swarm lure bottles, right? When I started, it was a small amount that I was starting with because I didn't know how it was going to do. And right now I'm sitting over here with 2,000 bottles that need to be filled up. But I had to order them because you have to order them when they have them, the specific ones, so it keeps your product consistent every time you send it out. You don't want it to be different.
So I was just going to show that the jars, those small jars, I never sell those direct. Almost never. Sometimes, but not really. And the 2 pound jars, I sell some of those directly to customers, but most of the jars go through the stores because my direct sale customers will usually economize. So this is a 6.6 pound. It's metric. It's 3 kgs. So I'm just trying to
Right.
translate. So that's 6.6 pound pail, and this is a 11 pound pail.
I was amazed when those bigger sizes, you sell a lot of those.
Yeah, most of my direct customers are pail people. Yeah.
And the biggest one I do is 3 pounds, right? So that's like a kg and a half.
I have one over here. I'm not going to lift it up. It's a 33-pound pail.
10 kgs?
So that's my biggest pail.
No, that's
15 kgs.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have a few customers will buy that one. I usually don't stock more than 1 or 2 of those big ones. But I stock a lot of these. Like I'll stock 50 of these because they go fast.
Alex, I would look at Gamber Container. They're located in Pennsylvania. So shipping to you in New York would, assuming you live in New York, because you said you were at Dancing Bee. I'm sorry. I was
Alex,
thinking
Dominion and Grimm would be is one of the good places for buying containers. But they want to sell pallets. Pallet loads. I'll show you one other thing.
so you have 2 pallets there, one without honey and one with honey.
What do you mean?
Like the pallet that I'm looking at right now on the front there all has a label on the box, which means it's been packaged and labeled, I would assume. And the ones in the back, maybe not. The first set you showed, not labeled.
Yeah.
They might be packed already.
Well, I just try to keep things organized because I have so many SKUs, right? I have my creamed honey, large and small creamed honey. Then I have my large and small liquid honey. And this stuff just came in the back door. I picked that up at the packer. There's no labels on that yet, so we need to get busy and label that.
Yeah, and because you do retail outlets, like you're in Safeway and some other stores up there, you move. For a guy that does it, I'm impressed because a guy of your size apiary, that you do all of the labeling, the delivery, the shelf stocking, all of that. But it's so great when you're like, oh, I sold $600 in honey today, or
it's
nice.
Something like do that. All of the work up front, and then you grab one of these boxes, you grab 4 of these boxes, you head off to the store, and of course they get terms,
right?
So you drop it off at the store at 30 days. Some stores pay me right away, but they have 30 days. Send a check or an e-transfer for $600 or so. That's really nice. So this was the other thing. I keep these in the freezer because they're a liquid, a plastic squeeze bottle with liquid honey. So I don't want it to granulate. So I leave it in the freezer. So that's this is a label. This is not a long-term. These were kind of a mistake label. So I'm using them up on this container. So that's a nice little, and for Alex, these I got from Dominion Grimm, but I get these through another guy who order skid loads from Dominion Grim because they won't sell you a couple boxes of this stuff.
Well, that's well, we went all over the place: queen rearing, jarring and packing, woodwork.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Talked about it all.
So another thing, I just saw something here. I'll just bring up. You know, I'm driving to my stores, and of course this gets dusty too. But I'm driving to my stores, and I won't give you the whole long story about how this came about, but I buy stuff like this from local producers, and I take it to the store. I won't say on their behalf because I make money on it, but I'll take this as a wild rice, very good wild rice. We've used this in the house. It's very good. So I have a few of my grocery stores. They order this stuff all the time. So it's a nice opportunity because I'm driving there anyway, right?
And make a little extra money on it.
Yeah, and I don't have to make a ton because it doesn't cost me. It doesn't cost me anything. I go to the guy's place. He's on the way to the city, and I get a case or two. It's tying up a few $100s of my money for could be a month or two. But I don't have to make a lot on a bag to make it worthwhile because I'm going.
Right. You already
on my
spent
way
the
there.
gas and everything to deliver the honey.
That's
So,
right. And the stores really appreciate it.
well, I'm
I
glad
haven't
to see
been
you're
looking at the comments, so I got to catch up.
I think pretty much been
Could you get your customers to return the jars to the store? I don't think the CFIA would care for that at all.
well, then you would have to have a whole sterilization and clean out process to make sure they were ready to go again, right?
You see, the reason I use a third-party packer is it's required by Canadian Food Inspection Agency to allow me to sell in a retail store. If I sell it myself, I sell it at a farmer's market or driveway or go to somebody's house. That's selling. They have provision for me as a producer to sell directly to a customer. But if I'm not there and there's just products sitting on a shelf, then the customer doesn't have that relationship. So CFIA needs to stand in the middle there and say, you know, certain assurances that this product meets certain standards of quality and packaging, et cetera, et cetera. So I have to have that packaged in Winnipeg by he's a very small operation. Don't think that I'm going to a giant factory. A very small operation. And so yeah, so one of the requirements is they can't fill used containers.
Doug says CFIA will not let you reuse containers.
Yeah. So
you know what I do with reused containers? Those are the ones that I wash and I put honey in and give to my family when they come over.
Right? Oh, absolutely. You can
like
reuse stuff, you know, for things like that. But you know what?
But I don't give discounts, so you know that.
I don't fill a lot of jars here because I'm not set up to do it, so I don't bother doing it. But if I was filling jars here and I sterilize the jars and whatnot, I'm allowed. I could fill that jar and sell it to a direct sale customer, right?
Well, you know, we got a lot of people in here, and a lot of them are the same people that watch Tuesday night streams. So I'll just remind everybody that if you do order from my website, there is a No Life Beekeepers code that if you watch the stream, you get 10% off anything you order from me using the code STREAM10. So that's awesome. All the time. That's anybody that watches the stream knows that. They can use it, buy their swarm lure, and save 10% or something like that. So whatever.
Well, that's good, Bob. That's really nice of you.
Just to let people.
I don't have sales.
All that money you got. it's, and this year, I think for me I'm going to have a lot of challenges. I won't say unique challenges because I've experienced them before. Right. So is it any different than any other year? No, not really. I mean, it's just doing the same things over and over again, expecting to get different results. So you know what that is. Beekeeping's insanity, right? I need to make a shirt and put it on my site. Definition of beekeeper: someone who does the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result.
That's hilarious.
So,
evening, Dean.
Good evening, Uncle Bob. That's it.
Yeah, Alex. There's a lot of regulations in Canada, but Quebec, Alex was telling us what has to go on out there, and boy, it's way worse out there. They can't do what I'm doing.
I'm proud of Alex in Quebec. He's come a long way, and I don't
developed a good little business there.
Yeah, I don't mean that in a negative way, but he's kind of an introvert, which a lot of beekeepers are, so that's not unusual. And then you find yourself with 2,000 pounds of honey, and your spare room is up to the ceiling with buckets, and you don't know what to do with it. And he's found him what was it, a brewer, I think, or somebody that uses his wine in bulk, so he sells it in bulk. So good for him, right?
Yep. That's what you need to do. And we had a lot of conversations and threw a lot of ideas at him as to what he could do and how he could market and whatnot. And it just goes to show that not everybody's idea is your way. You need to find your own way. You can use ideas. You can say, hey, that's a good idea. Let me try that or something. But you really need to find your own way. And I think he started to find his way in that. That's really great.
Well, we gave him all kinds of ideas. The One Tree Honey Company, the Creamy Dreamy Honey Company.
Creamy Dreamy Honey Company.
And everybody thought it was funny. And then I saw, what is it, Fabergé or whatever, the yogurt company have a brand of yogurt called Creamy Dreamy.
Creamy Dreamy.
And I was like, see, someone genius. I didn't work for iHeartMedia for nothing. The marketing's there somewhere. I just got to pull it out once in a while. But but again, it's something that worked for him in his area, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice to come to a community when you can ask and say questions and, get a response, or be a part of the stream. So it's a good thing. Good thing. He had to find his way. He needed ideas, and then that's it.
For community. That's
he still needs a truck. We got to work on him on the truck.
He does still need a truck.
Even if it's one of those little Chinese Dodge Rams.
No, you can't haul anything in those.
Hey, the guy held 500 kilograms in that truck.
I don't know.
He can buy my truck. I just broke the 50,000 threshold. I only owe $49,849 now.
There you go.
$250.
That's awesome.
Only 7 more years of payments and I'll be done.
And that's your truck.
That's crazy. He does need a truck. I don't know how he does it. He's got a Chevrolet Malibu, and he takes all of his bee equipment out, all of his honey supers, harvests his honey, and brings it all back with him.
Yeah,
takes it to his apartment, extracts all the honey in a doggone Chevrolet Malibu. Come on.
He's always said, "Oh, I can put this much, this and this and this and this in my Malibu," and I'm thinking that's pretty incredible. That's pretty incredible. Hey, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. Put that up there. Oh, you put that up. That's really nice. That's really nice.
That's what we need for Alex. We just need to design a collapsible bee box that just collapses, and you can uncollapse it, expand it when you get to the bee yard, right? You can stack 1,000 of them in the back, right? I'm sure somebody in China could make that for us.
Sure.
We could get with Brian and have him put a queen right dial on every one of them and pop them open.
Don't give Brian any ideas. He'll be printing collapsible beehives now.
Maybe collapsible beehives. They just got a metal rod in each corner that lets you smush them down.
He looked at those little mini Isuzus, but they don't haul much. They haul a couple 100 pounds, I think. And he's thinking, my Malibu hauls that much.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the thing.
It was surprising. He told me what the rating on those trucks is, and it's.
Well, the other option he had was buying a Unimog.
Well,
yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a little overkill.
At $100,000.
Yeah, $100,000 Mercedes Unimog. I guess if you're going to be a first-class beekeeper, you might as well do it in a Mercedes.
Might as well. You want to be the first beekeeper that drives the truck with two great
Doug said, good thing Alex isn't a moose hunter. He'd have to strap it on the roof. He wouldn't be able to see anything. The shocks would give out.
For sure.
Maybe he could buy a military surplus like deuce and a half, 2.5 ton truck.
How in the world would he ever feed that thing? You can't make enough money beekeeping to feed a deuce and a half.
Be expensive. Yeah. What'd you buy with your honey money? Fuel for the deuce and a half to go get more honey?
Yeah.
That's it for sure.
I just sell some honey to drive the deuce and a half to the gas station.
Well, you know, it is 7 p.m., which means Charlie's going live in an hour. And I know you
want to have a bite before Charlie's live.
Well, why? Charlie eats during his stream.
Yeah,
Bill,
that's true.
And if you're still on here, I got to call you out because you called me out for eating, and yet I see you eat on live streams.
He tries
to do popcorn. You rival Charlie on the amount of popcorn you consume on a live stream.
Popcorn Bill.
Popcorn Bill and Popcorn Charlie.
The Popcorn Twins.
The CB Beekeeper Chat. Charlie and Bill, CB. Broadcasting everywhere.
There you go.
Well,
thanks to everybody for dropping in here. How many we got, Bob? I don't
right
see
now we've got 39. I saw almost 50 at one time. So it is kind of a daytime thing right now, right? Todd's only 4 o'clock. He's still at work, so
we quite often try and start a little bit earlier. But I had to do a lot of saw work, so we couldn't start while I was doing that. Got to use one of my favorite old saws. This old radial arm saw. I love this thing.
It's a nice saw.
It is a nice saw. It was brand new, almost brand new when I bought it. It was so well taken care of. It just purrs.
All right. Well, it looks like Larimore's ducking out and DC's ducking out. So,
okay.
Guess that means it's time for us to duck out.
Treat your loved ones kindly on the Valentine's Day. Go cuddle up or whatever you're moved to do.
Yep. And I guess we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for joining me in the Woodshop.
Thanks for allowing me to join you in the Woodshop.
Anytime.
And we'll see
you. You've been in the Woodshop, so
I've been right where you're standing right now. That's where we did our infamous Bob and Doug McKenzie skit.
We did it right here.
If you did not see that skit, you need to go back to look a year ago.
Yeah.
What did we call it? Bob and Doug McKenzie in the Woodshop or something like that?
I'm not sure.
But we had a good time.
Right here. I was here. Bob was here. We couldn't hardly do it. We were just laughing so hard. I remember that. That was awesome.
Well, we'll see you guys on the next stream.
Nice to see everybody.
Goodbye now.